You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome to Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan, and we have a jam-packed show today. We're all Twitter here at the Women's Media Center because our annual awards gala is coming up on November 1st. You can find out more about it by going to womensmediacenter.com. It's going to be very exciting. I do have another little bit of housekeeping to do. I have a small correction from last week. I made some reference to the fact that at his rallies, Trump would drum up hatred against women in general and then have the crowd chanting, lock her up, lock her up. And he always targeted Hillary Clinton and Nancy Pelosi, which immediately got lock her up screams from the audience. And he did this just out of anti-woman hatred. It had nothing to do with the fact that anybody was running because neither of them was running. That was, of course, inaccurate because Pelosi is running for her seat, which she has held for a long time, and to which they will re-elect her for her seat in Congress from California. Okay, tidying up aside, our show today is especially interesting, I think. My guest is running for Congress, but has already won, and we'll explain that. I wanted to give you a taste of having won, what it's feeling like, so that we'll be prepared for a week or so from now. She will be the first Muslim woman ever in Congress, and she will be the first Palestinian American ever in Congress, Rashida Tlaib. And that's coming up as well, of course, as Surrealism Corner and Fighting Words and news and all sorts of goodies. But before we do any of that, come hold my hand and let's jump inside the headlines. As I write these notes, I am literally inside the headlines. Parts of my beloved New York City are in semi-lockdown, since no one knows where the right-wing terrorists will strike next. They already sent package bombs to the CNN studios, as well as to New York State Governor Cuomo, to Hillary Rodham and Bill Clinton, and then going nationally to Michelle and Barack Obama, Congresswoman Maxine Waters, former Attorney General Eric Holder, and back to New York for Robert De Niro, and down to Delaware for former Vice President Biden. God only knows how many more people who have openly spoken out against Donald Trump are being targeted. For his part, Trump has condemned the bombings as bad, and then blamed the media. He notably did not refer to the bombings as terrorist acts, which is precisely what they are. But Trump would never recognize such an act as terrorism unless it were committed by a Middle Easterner or possibly a Latin American, nor does he take any responsibility for having incited and fostered this violence in every speech he gives. I wrote an entire book on this subject of terrorism, The Demon Lover, The Roots of Terrorism. And not surprisingly, it includes a section on terminology, on the totally inaccurate stereotypes about the terrorist, about the manipulation of the word itself to fit the political shape of the moment, one man's terrorist being another man's hero. And the consistency is that they're both men. It's a guy's thing. Women are always tokens, no matter how they may strut and swagger and pretend they fit in. I know. I once was one of them. And that story's in the book, too. And at the same time, Trump does know who to call terrorists. He calls terrorists the almost 7,000 children, women, and men who walk, stumble, and stagger north from Central America toward, they think, freedom. But the Caravan deserves its own space, and I'll give it that space in Fighting Words later on. There is other news, although sometimes it's hard to see through something as epic as the Caravan to smaller stories. But this story is close to home. It will sound familiar to you if you're a woman or a man of color or disabled or, well, fill in the blank. Let's say you go into a store and the clerk starts following you around, suspicious, eyeing you, implying you might shoplift. Or let's say everyone in a meeting overlooks your eloquently phrased suggestion, but then when Herbert over there says exactly the same thing, not even so well put, 5 minutes later, they applaud Herbert's brilliance. You literally feel your blood pressure rise. You taste adrenaline, your cheeks flush, your heart beats faster. Well, a new study now suggests that everyday discrimination may actually raise women's blood pressure over time. Danielle Beatty Moody of the University of Maryland, the study's lead author, says discrimination is just bad for your health. The study looked at data from 2,180 women across the country, including middle-aged women who were Black, Latina, Asian American, including those of Japanese and Chinese ancestry, and European American white. The researchers asked them about experiences of feeling ignored or receiving poor service in restaurants or being treated as if they weren't intelligent or being patronized, all those small, hostile, drip moments of discrimination that go unnoticed often by someone who doesn't experience them. The results suggest that everyday discrimination experiences were linked to a 1 to 2 point rising blood pressure over the 10-year study. Now that can sound fairly small, 2 units for systolic blood pressure and 1 for diastolic blood pressure. But it's not insignificant in terms of health impact differences, because differences of just 2 or greater millimeters of mercury for blood pressure can be predictive of future stroke, heart disease, and predicted mortality outcome. Moody also notes that discrimination is associated with weight gain, possibly due to stress, and with depression. So, if you sometimes find yourself thinking, patriarchy is going to kill me yet, you may not be all that far from the truth. The blood pressure of women in India must be chronically high. The latest reason is because of the enormous gap between the Indian Supreme Court's modern liberal decisions and the attitudes in remote areas and villages of this vast country of 1.3 billion people. For example, Sabarimala Temple in the southern coastal state of Kerala is an outright defiance after the Supreme Court struck down a ban last month that had barred women of menstruating age from entering the temple or the grounds, since they are, quote, impure. Girls and women between age 10 and 50 have been banned from the centuries-old temple for as long as anyone can remember, because the god who is being worshipped is a celibate god, and he might be disgusted. Yup. But after the Supreme Court declared that this denied women their right to worship and thus was unconstitutional, 2 New York Times reporters, 1 female and 1 male, went to Kerala to cover the story and see the temple. Several hundred men appeared, screaming at the woman. They then rushed the journalists and began stoning them, striking the woman reporter on the shoulder. About 24 police officers tried to protect the reporters, but they were beaten by the mob as well. Finally, the reporters and the police withdrew, with the village men following, screaming. The protesters also tried to rip a 22-year-old woman who had been planning to visit the temple out of a bus she was riding, and one policeman said, quote, "It's almost as if these people view women as terrorists." There it is again. Fundamentalist Hinduism in India is encouraged these days by the right-wing Hindu Nationalist Party, which rose to power in 2014 with the election of Prime Minister Modi. The Kerala riots occurred on October 17th. Since then, at least 12 women have attempted the journey to the temple, each one being met by the village men's mob, shouting in her face, pummeling the police, setting vehicles on fire, hurling rocks, and blocking the steep 3-mile trail leading to the temple. All the women were forced to turn back. One fell unconscious. The temple has now closed for about 2 weeks before its peak season starts with tourists and religious pilgrims, all men. and officials are trying to figure out what to do. The Supreme Court has announced it will hear petitions next month that challenge its ruling, but a reversal of the ruling seems unlikely. Some women's activists are baffled by the backlash, noting that the removal of exclusionary rules in other temples and shrines in India have not been met with the same level of fury. The Haji Ali Mosque in Mumbai and Hindu temples in west-central India began admitting women with no incidents. Some women's rights activists tried to approach the temple wearing shoulder pads and helmets as makeshift riot gear, but had to retreat in fear for their lives. The Kerala government and press has deemed such women publicity seekers trying to showcase their power. Norway is undergoing a national reckoning with its past and has offered an official apology to women and their offspring who were ostracized, stigmatized, and even deported because they have had relationships with German soldiers during World War II. Even if the women merely had been suspected of doing this but actually were innocent, they were perceived to be traitors, and many faced unlawful arrest. Prime Minister Erna Solberg noted that some of the women acted out of terror, or, she said, to save others, or were raped or forced to marry, or even actually fell in love. Thousands of Norwegian-German children were born from these Norwegian-German relationships because the Norwegian coloring, blonde and blue-eyed, struck Nazis as properly Aryan for their Lebensborn program to produce Aryan babies. After Norway was liberated, women who had married Germans were stripped of their Norwegian citizenship and deported along with their children. Some were arrested and interned in special camps. Others were tarred and feathered, and crowds beat them and shaved their heads. Violence against these women was institutionalized in Norway, said the Prime Minister, and some were committed to psychiatric institutions against their will. Most of the women are long gone now, but in 2007 a group of German-born children took Norway to the European Court of Human Rights to seek compensation for their lost childhoods. But their case was ruled inadmissible as being too late. Now comes this apology, specifically deploring the idea that women's bodies belonged to the nation and so the nation had a right to punish them. It hadn't escaped attention, though, that it's easier for the apology to be made to the children now that most of the women are dead. Now, I know this last item will absolutely delight some people who hate, loathe, detest bugs. Nonetheless, it's a serious problem. Insects around the world are in a crisis, showing dramatic declines in invertebrate populations. Huge numbers have been lost in a pristine national forest in Puerto Rico, and the forest's insect-eating animals have now gone missing too. Beetles and bees decreased by 45%, as determined by an international team of biologists in 2014. A study last year showed a 76% decrease in flying insects in the past few decades in German nature preserves. The latest report, published on October 15th of this year by the National Academy of Sciences, shows that this loss now extends to the Americas, and it's due to climate change. Puerto Rico's great rainforest, El Yunque, is the only tropical rainforest in the National Forest System and was designated as such by Teddy Roosevelt. Now the food chain there is gravely affected. In the last 40 years, the insects and the insectivores, birds, frogs, lizards, once abundant, have all but vanished. Butterflies, moths, grasshoppers, spiders, and more are all far less abundant. A brilliant green bird called the Puerto Rican toddy that eats bugs almost exclusively has diminished by 90%. In the same 40 years showing the arthropod crash, the average temperature in the rainforest increased by 4 degrees Fahrenheit. But temperatures in the tropics stick to a narrow band, and invertebrates that live there are adapted to only those temperatures. Since bugs can't regulate their internal heat, they fare very badly the minute such temperatures change. One scientist calls it death by 1,000 cuts, adding in pesticides, habitat loss, pathogens, invasive species, and changing thermal levels in which insects can no longer lay eggs because their chemistry breaks down. The scientists plaintively search for something, anything people can do. One said, "Please, please use more fuel-efficient cars, and please turn off unused electronics." And they also plead with people to plant gardens with native plants that flower throughout the year. But none of that will address the reality that 35% of the world's plant crops require pollination by bees, wasps, and other animals. Wild insects provide $57 billion worth of six-legged labor in the United States each year. Perhaps putting that holy of holies dollar value on this will garner attention. We have to take a short break here, but stick around because the interview is coming up. And first, in the next segment, we're going to go into the Surrealism Corner. Subscribe to this program on your favorite podcast platform and leave us a review. Follow us on Twitter at WMC Live, like our Facebook page at facebook.com/WMC Live, and visit us at WMCLive.com for more information about our show and our guests.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome back, this time to the Surrealism Corner. You might remember when this program covered the Museum of the Bible, a $500 million museum in Washington, D.C., owned by the billionaire, right-wing, and very, very, very Christian Green family, which also owns the Hobby Lobby stores, and which somehow is vaguely interrelated with the also ultra-religious, ultra-right-wing, ultra-billionaire DeVos family, as in Betsy DeVos, Secretary of Miseducation. The Museum of the Bible is committed to building an official, worldwide Christian government, starting in the United States, and it holds special leadership Christian Bible training sessions attended by Vice President Pence and Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, and lots of congressmen. It's a fun group. Anyway, in that museum were 5 prized pieces purportedly from the Dead Sea Scrolls, but German scientists have now tested the pieces and discovered they were not from the Dead Sea Scrolls at all. The fragments will no longer be displayed. Real scientists discovering fake scrolls. What do you know? Kleenex is scrapping its range of man-sized tissues after 62 years, following complaints that the branding is sexist. The company first launched those tissues aimed at men in 1956, claiming they would stay strong when wet. This is important because obviously soggy tissues must be female. I have on occasion bought these big, strong tissues because the dainty ones cannot cope with my nose, which, when I have a bad cold, exudes more mucus than that creature in Alien. Anyway, complaints on social media about the product's gendered marketing had prompted the change. Starting later this year, the tissues will be called Kleenex Extra Large. Presumably, this name is because many men have a thing about size. Nevertheless, it's great to know that I haven't spent my life fighting for the more than half of humanity that is female in order to win such victories as the extinction of man-size Kleenex, named man-size. Wow, That was a life worth living. BuzzFeed reports that some of Trump's judicial nominees have private Twitter accounts they're not sharing with the public. A review of nominees' social media activity showed inconsistency in what they're disclosing to committee members in their Senate questionnaires, which are public and posted online, and what they're not sharing. At least 6 of Trump's pending and confirmed nominees have locked Twitter accounts. I didn't even know you could have locked Twitter accounts. And doesn't that kind of negate the whole point of Twitter? Of those 6, 4 did not list the accounts in their Senate questionnaires. The remaining 2 nominees are new and haven't even given their materials into the committee yet. What was Elizabeth Warren thinking? Claiming Cherokee and Delaware ancestry as a big thing when almost everyone who grew up in or near Oklahoma does the same. When Bill Clinton claimed Cherokee ancestry via his Arkansas roots, the native author Sherman Alexie, himself now in trouble over Me Too accusations, wryly noted that, pretty much everybody white claimed Cherokee ancestry nowadays, making Bill Clinton blush. In a somewhat unsubtle first step toward a presidential run, Warren foolishly descended to Trump's gutter level and sank to his challenge that if she got a DNA test, he would give $1 million to her favorite charity. You do not debate people like Trump. You do not play their game. But Warren got her DNA test, which did show a fractional percentage of indigenous heritage. The Cherokee Nation and other native nations immediately responded by noting that the tribes set their own citizenship requirements, thank you very much, and that they understandably reject being defined by non-indigenous people, but that they also reject DNA testing because it doesn't distinguish between the different indigenous groups of North and South America. Well, that last is a bit troubling because DNA doesn't work that way. And they're putting tribal loyalty ahead of scientific fact. But then again, these days, who doesn't? I would think that when Europeans have stolen your land, kidnapped your children and forbidden them to learn their own languages and cultures, broken your treaties, impoverished you, reduced your reputation to that of, quote, primitive savages, relocated you repeatedly, and slaughtered lots of your people, then, when they come after your DNA, it could make you pretty cranky. So now the left and the right, the Europeans and the indigenous, are all down on Elizabeth Warren. And naturally, Trump now says he'll never pay her the $1 million because he himself did not conduct the DNA test. A truly thrilling idea to geneticists. Oh, Elizabeth Warren, what were you thinking? Or were you just nervous that in the start of muscle flexing for the presidential race, Senators Kamala Harris and Amy Klobuchar were getting headlines due to the Kavanaugh hearings, and you weren't? According to a new analysis of a study from the Pew Research Center, older people are worse than younger people at distinguishing facts from opinions. So much for elderly wisdom. Given 10 statements, 5 facts, and 5 opinions, 34% of 18 to 29-year-olds identified all 5 facts correctly, and 46% identified all 5 opinions. That's pretty low in itself, both of them. The numbers, however, were 17% and 21% for those 65 and older, much, much lower. The research cuts against the notion that digitally native young people are more exposed and therefore more susceptible to misinformation. There is, however, a correlation with poor performance on the test and exposure to television news. So turn off the telly and go online. To where? To newspapers. Surely not to getting your news from Facebook. And 2 more short items. A ViView brand LE5 body camera worn by a New York City police officer burst into flames, and now the department is taking 2,990 of the cameras out of service. The department was planning to outfit its 23,000 patrol officers with the cameras by December under a multimillion-dollar contract with the manufacturer. The cops don't want to wear cameras anyway because they might provide a record of police misbehavior. And the fact that they can burst into flames on one's body certainly does strengthen the cop's argument against this particular fashion statement. And we close with another wonderful, weird little word from a different language. Tartle. T-A-R-T-L-E. Tartle. No, tartle is not a small tart, and tartle is not a promiscuous reptile. Tartle, in Scottish, is the act of hesitating while introducing someone because you forgot their name. Now, it's true, as one ages, one tartles quite a bit. Furthermore, I've learned that if I'm feeling tired, I really should stay away from social events because otherwise I will spend far too much time in my own surrealism corner, tartling. Time for another quick break, and then I will be back for a conversation with a woman who is not running, although she is, but she's already won, because the ineptitude of her Republican opponent made him fill out his paperwork wrong. She is bound for the House of Representatives, and she will be something else. Stay tuned. The Women's Media Center, founded in 2005 by Jane Fonda, Gloria Steinem, and myself, is a progressive, nonpartisan, nonprofit organization working to make women visible and powerful in media. You can learn more about the WMC at womensmediacenter.com.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
And we're back again with my guest, Rashida Tlaib. She was born in 1976, is an American politician and attorney, and the Democratic former member of the Michigan House of Representatives, where she was reelected, and until term limited out, she represented the 6th District in southwest Detroit, quite near Dearborn. On taking office, she had become the first Muslim American woman to serve in the Michigan legislature and the second in history to be elected to any U.S. state legislature. Now, in 2018, she has won the Democratic nomination for the U.S. House of Representatives seat from Michigan's 13th congressional district. She is unopposed in the general election, so she's a de facto already win. And she's expected to become the first Muslim woman in Congress and the first Palestinian-American woman ever in Congress. She's a single mom of 2 little boys, and she's going to rock it in Congress. Rashida Tlaib. Rashida, marhaba. Welcome to Women's Media Center Live.
Thank you for having me.
Well, not only will you be the first Muslim woman in Congress, you will be the first Palestinian-American woman in Congress. And you are another first, because I realize that although we're talking before Election Day, you're running unopposed, so you are in effect already in Congress, inshallah. Am I wrong?
No, I've been lucky to have a Republican challenger who didn't complete his paperwork wrong and wasn't put on the ballot. I mean, you have other, Green Party members, libertarians, and so forth, but my mother would tell you, my Arab mother would tell you, that's the power of prayer, that I didn't have a Republican challenger. But yeah, I'm still trying to help the incredible number of women of color across the country get elected. Yes. And so I'm really focused on making sure that I'm not alone up there, and, helping Lucy McBeth in Georgia, Lauren Underwood in Chicago, in Illinois area. So there's just a number of really incredibly talented women who will also be first in many ways coming to Congress with me. So
Yes, no, it is the female wave, certainly, as well as the blue wave, and it's an incredibly exciting time. I mean, it's been a frustration for years for old organizers like me that the power and the might of the women's movement in this country, we've never been able to really move it as a block in any sense to the polling booth. And this time, or there have been flashes of it, but never really. I mean, and this time,
I hope people think of it. For me though, and not to interrupt. We keep talking about waves because waves come and go, but we got to talk about owning the ocean, right? Or having the ocean, because we have these, so-called waves, and I always think that these are temporary things. But I mean, having the first Native American woman ever elected from New Mexico coming, and the first African American women from Massachusetts, and as well as Connecticut. I mean, this is pretty incredible that we still are actually talking about first.
No, I know.
2018.
Well, I long for the day when we don't have to, and in fact, I refer to us as a permanent wave. We are a tsunami that keeps on coming. Let's talk about you. You're a former Michigan state legislator. You were a Detroit native, and you were reelected to the Michigan State Legislation House. Am I correct?
Yeah. Yes, 3. Yeah, I served 3 terms there. There's term limits, so after my 3rd term, that's when I. My current Congress member in my district retired early,
right?
And the seat opened up, and I said, "Oh,
and I'm
not going to sit on the sidelines. I'm going to jump in." And
I would hope
John Conyers represented our district extremely well. I mean, he has such a tremendous amount of courage on a number of issues, especially voting against the Iraq War when it was unpopular to, voting against the Patriot Act when majority of his party members did. And so I love the fact that in many ways his legacy through my courageous kind of stance on a number of issues will continue.
He was a great congressman. And of course he's a movement person. He came out of the civil rights movement, and there's something about him when a movement person runs. It's different. I mean, it ain't the same. It ain't the same at all.
No, it isn't.
What do you think? What kinds of differences? Talk for a moment. Let's talk, and might as well be wishland because we intend to make it real. What do you think that the presence of that many women, and particularly the leadership of women of color, will have as an effect on Congress?
I think folks that are listening and need to know, I mean, more than half of the members of Congress right now are millionaires.
Yep.
They're in an income bracket that is very much not the majority of Americans across the country. The fact that there are all these women of color coming to the United States Congress is not just because we're beautifully colorful and diverse, and from our ethnicity to our faith and to all those things, but the fact that we have student debt, the fact that we don't have a choice of where we send our kids to school sometimes, where it's a class size of 30 or more, where we have special needs children. I mean, I've talked to, Lucy McBeth, who lost her son to gun violence, to a teacher of the year in Johanna Hayes, who truly understands what's broken with our education system and won't back down until we fix it. There's just a number of incredibly courageous women who, are fed up. I mean, they probably won't choose these words, but I feel this need to say, clear out the room, boys. I think it's time for people that are much more focused and have much more at stake, being mothers, being daughters, being, taking care of our elderly parents and not being able to afford. We hear all of it, but we're living it. That's the difference, I think, and that's why. Folks that have to talk to just continually feeling this disconnect to Congress. And when I tell them over 250 out of the 500 are in an income bracket of millionaires, I mean, good for them. You're successful. But that just means just how unaware that they are of the struggle for many of working families and in many cases for us women that are becoming the primary breadwinner for our families, and increasingly are, the frontline workers at the service industry, you name it, we're there. And we're trying the best in what was been handed to us, and we're kind of set up. And so people like us are now running for office. And we're not taking corporate dollars. We're not standing with, what I would call the sellout kind of Democratic establishment that, just hasn't done enough to push back against that agenda that to me is a corporate assault on all of us.
Yeah. They're so unaware, Congress in particular, in fact, the House. Well, no, the Senate's just as bad. But they're so unaware, not only economically, but you saw Orrin Hatch. I wake up every day and think, is he really human? Because I'm not sure. We're used to the pale males and their sonorous droning on about the have-nots and the greedy people approaching, from the border to take job. And all of the rest of their crap. And on women, they haven't even begun to start to think, to imagine, to conceive that female human beings have a different reality, most of them on the planet. And so I just think that the numbers alone, some of the state parliaments that would be state legislatures here in Australia have almost all women cabinets, and both the opposition and the governing party in Queensland are headed by women with their own cabinets, with their own everything. So they changed even the working hours. They changed to more family-friendly hours. They changed the atmosphere. Everything, literally, all the furniture got rearranged. I think, but we've never had a critical mass in the House. We've been creeping up there, but it's still a shockingly low percentage since we're the majority of people in the country, female people. So this is a chance to really see what could happen. How is it looking to you on the ground as you travel around? Because one hears,
what I consistently hear is people want different. Oh, I'm going to vote for it because I want something different. And not just me, but everyone. And again, it's not because of the color of our skin or because, for many it is inspiring to have someone with a unique name like theirs or have the same faith or but it's more about having someone that talks like us.
Yeah.
Somebody said, "You talk normal." I said, "Of course I do."
Of course you do.
And I think it's that connection of just being a mother of two boys and the fact that I lived in a community where I thought that odor that from the pollution was normal. And when I say that to people, they're like, "I know it's not normal." And I said, "Absolutely not." And so it really, what I'm sensing from people is there is this, I remember during when President Obama was running, people kind of skipped. They kind of danced through the polls. Now it's just marching, like, get out of my way. I got to do this, like, move.
Yes.
And I sense it even at the polling locations. We expected probably 60,000 people, probably way less than that. In the 13th Congressional District here in Michigan, we got 89,000 people. So over 45,000 more people came out to vote than we've ever expected. That is amazing. These are people that had not voted in probably the 5 or 6 last, we're talking about over 2, decade and a half coming out to vote. And so it is really incredibly inspiring to see this much movement happening with people feeling this need of acting. So many people say, I can never do what you do, the rallies, the protests. I said, great, go protest, do it through your vote.
That's right.
Go out there and be engaged and do it through your vote. And people are getting it now. They get it. And is it part of it because of who's president of the United States? Maybe. But I think a lot of other part of it is, no matter what, people don't think of it this way, but what's happening and how, what's happening to how the culture right now in America is regarding women, it's very oppressive. Even me as an educated, successful young woman, I felt like somebody did, cover my head, cover my my mouth and say, shh, be quiet.
That's right.
This is just, and it's exactly, I think, what's driving this many women to run for office.
The insults coming from the White House and the Republican Party in general. Yeah. In general, it's because he's a symptom. Yeah. He's not the only problem. Have been so racist, so misogynist, so head in the sand that they take your breath away. There's an element to this day of disbelief. Can it possibly be this bad? Yeah, and it could be worse. Yeah. So this is our chance to turn it around. Oh, Rashida, all possible best luck. The day you walk the day you walk into Congress will be a great day for everybody, whether they know.
And Robin, you should know, my mother, I'm wearing my mother's Palestinian thobe as I get sworn in. So I'm going to be very proudly, expressing my culture and my roots as a Palestinian, as an Arab woman. I think it's going to be very inspiring. I mean, just even talking to young women now. I mean, 11-year-old girl wore a blazer, and I said, "That's a cute blazer." And she says, I want to look like you." And I said, forget Congress, you're going to be president of the United States. And she says, "That's right." And what I love is it is inspiring this even younger generation.
Of course.
You have to, believing it.
You have to see it to believe it, and to be it. So you're the model for her. Is your mom still alive?
Yes.
Thank God. So she can see this.
Oh yeah, she's going to be there.
My
grandmother in Palestine is alive and well, and she's all ready to watch it. We're going to live stream it so that my family in Palestine, so many of them, are still alive and well and living in the West Bank.
Oh, how wonderful. Well, congratulations, Rashida, from my heart, and the best possible luck. And I will tune in the day that you are sworn in. I mean, it's quite thrilling. And stay well and give them hell. And thanks.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And thanks for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Now it's time for one last break, and then I'll be right back with some fighting words.
For the smartest talk about news, politics, sex, books, religion, race, and more, it's Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan. Audacious, witty, provocative, informative, and fun. It's Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan. Talk radio with a brain.
Welcome back again to some fighting words. The Caravan's journey began in the triangle of Honduras, El Salvador, and Guatemala, where drug traffic, violence, poverty, and political corruption are epidemic. It's a classic case of cynical patriarchal politics from the right and the left, opportunistically conspiring for their own purposes while manipulating what the left calls the masses and the right calls the folk, while people suffer and die. It began because, in protest against Honduras's divisive presidential election last November, which the Organization of American States found so problematic it called for a new vote, Hondurans took to the streets against the fraudulent vote count. Nevertheless, the Trump regime gave its official support to the new Honduran president, Juan Hernandez, despite evidence of his corruption and having amassed much too much power. So members of the leftist opposition devised the idea of a caravan marching north as a dramatic, visible example of what happens when the government fails its people. They had in mind 500, maybe 1,000 people maximum. A leftist politician, Luis Redondo, posted on Facebook, quote, "When the world sees everyone walking, they should ask where are they coming from and who is responsible for so many people leaving Honduras. Then we can say those responsible are the corrupt and corruptors of the National Party." Close quote. The left in Honduras played directly into the hands of the right in the United States, since Trump and his regime were desperate to shift attention from Saudi Arabia's murder of Khashoggi, and diversion is their favorite tactic. So Trump stoked fear about hordes of Latin Americans marching on America. From there it spiraled down, with rumor and lies, accusations and cross-accusations, that the U.S. would cut off all aid to Honduras if the caravan wasn't stopped, that Honduran officials were handing out dollar bills to migrants to get them to come home, which was then reported in the United States as migrants being paid by George Soros to join the caravan. And there were false videos shot in other countries, claims that gangs were behind the march, that Mexican police were injured by caravan members in bloody street fights, that the caravan members are carrying dangerous diseases, that they're burning American flags and boarding buses and trains when the cameras aren't around instead of walking. Lies. All lies. But they worked beautifully with Trump's terrified base, his ignorant, bigoted, terrified base. Newt Gingrich proudly said that Republicans hope increased coverage of the migrants will prompt certain voter groups, especially white suburban women, away from Democratic candidates, if Trump can stoke enough fear about gangs and drugs. It's a caravan of pawns, suffering pawns. Because the thing is, they started joining on their own. Leaderless, without tactics or strategy, innocent of the ways in which they're being used, by both sides, they knew only one thing, and it's still the only thing they know, that life was unbearable where they were. Between 200 and 300 people on average leave Honduras every day normally, risking the journey north for the possibility of a future free from the violence and saturation of poverty in their daily life. At home, the drug lords draft their sons into cartels and kidnap their daughters into prostitution. A devastating drought from climate change has destroyed the palm oil crop and laid off hundreds and hundreds of workers. But it's dangerous, you see, to go north in small groups, so that's why they go in small caravans. There are bandits on the road to take what little food and few pennies you have. There's safety in numbers. So this time more people joined, and more. Whole families, extended families, entire neighborhoods. They have walked for almost 2 weeks now and have more miles ahead of them. Some, in despair, gave up, turned around, and went back home, knowing full well that joblessness, crime, violence from both police and gangs, rape and starvation await their return. Some died en route, from falls, from heat stroke, from exhaustion. Yet others joined along the way, from Guatemala, El Salvador, all over the blasted region. There are now more than 7,000 people in the caravan. One Guatemalan man traveling with his wife and their year-old son, who spent part of the night on sheets of cardboard in the central square of Huistla, Mexico, told a New York Times reporter, "This is straight up biblical." Migrants filled every square foot of the little plaza, sprawling on cardboard, blankets, plastic sheeting. Most wear whatever they had on when they decided to leave Central America. Many stagger along in flimsy shoes, sneakers with holes in them, flip-flops. The man is right. It is biblical. It's the Exodus, the Israelites flowing out of Egypt. It's as naive as the Children's Crusade, too. They're unaware that they may be met at the U.S. border by armed soldiers who will fire at them if necessary to bar them from the land of opportunity. Apparently the Latin American leftists aren't telling them that because it doesn't serve their purpose. And the American regime certainly isn't sending emissaries to tell them that either, because they are so useful, the migrants, for scaring voters in the upcoming election. The migrants know nothing about any upcoming U.S. election. Despite some efforts of Mexico to stop or slow the caravan, it continues, now leaderless, organic. Any master plans by organizers fallen by the roadside, just the people themselves. They move as if one body, the way starlings swoop and wheel and circle in great dipping and rising whorls and sheets across the sky, in what's called a murmuration. But each dot in this pointillist image is a human being. In some towns they pass through, volunteer nurses treat people for blisters, for sunburn, for dehydration, for broken bones. They treat diabetics who have no medicine. So far, 2 women have given birth along the way, and 1 birth was stillborn. The women, oh my God, the women. They are harassed and assaulted. They try to help each other. The men yell at them to keep up, but the men carry only parcels, and the women carry parcels and children. Anyone who has ever been around a 2-year-old child for 1 hour knows that the demands of that toddler are ferocious. Imagine, then, trudging in flip-flops on rocky roads and hot pavement and muddy fields 8 to 10 miles a day, hour after day after week, with a 2-year-old strapped to your back or riding your hip, or a 2-year-old and a 3-year-old, or 2 and 4 and 7-year-olds hanging onto your skirt, all the little ones whining, hungry, thirsty, sleepy, scared, oh scared, wailing for attention. Decent people in towns and cities and rural areas along the way bring out pots of food, mostly rice and beans, but sometimes there are days with no food except for the little they might have saved from what they brought with them. One night in a small town, a local band started playing, and a few young migrants danced, because it's hard to stamp out the human hunger for a moment of happiness. In a corner of the square, a group of older women knelt, saying their rosary together, because it's hard to erase superstition, and even harder to erase hope. These are Donald Trump's calloused criminals and terrorists, swept north by cynical politics of men on the right and on the left. They're just looking for work and food and a little respite. They want to stop. They're desperate to rest. Freedom is abstract, but they know they want some peace. So thirsty, so tired. They want the baby to stop crying. Oh God, let the baby stop crying, let it stop. This is biblical, yes. This is medieval, too. This is happening now. This is a crime against humanity. Those are my fighting words. Add yours on Twitter and remember to tag us at WMC Live and use the hashtag Fighting Words. And that's our show for today. You can follow me on Twitter at @TheRobinMorgan and on Facebook at facebook.com/TheRobinMorgan. Check out my blog at robinmorgan.net and find my latest book, Dark Matter, wherever books are sold. Opinions expressed on this program do not necessarily represent the Women's Media Center. Here's the family for our show. Executive producer as well as founding and sustaining sponsor, Regina K. Scully. WMC president and co-executive producer of this program, Julie Burton. I'm Robin Morgan, your producer and host. Thank you for being with us. Join us again next time on Women's Media Center Live.